Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are on this lovely world on your own screen. Yes, you have chosen the right channel. You are together with the CRMKonvo's gang and their special guest of today, Brian Sommer. And as I goofed to prepare properly, it is my pleasure to let Brian introduce himself, who he is, where he comes from, and what his most recent observations on a conference on HR software solution was. Brian, welcome to our floor.
Glad to be here. Good to see Thomas as well. And for those who don't know who I am I'd say a fixture. That's a polite way of saying I've been doing this a long time, but I've been a fixture in the analyst world and in the tormenting vendors. But I help a few too along the way. But I'm one of those rare buy-side analysts. I mostly help clients who are buying technology as opposed to the vendors who are settling it. I'm not. Those are sell-side analysts, and they're real good at peddling subscriptions and research reports and white papers for a fee and that kind of thing. And that's generally not me. I mean, I do get a little bit of revenue from vendors every year. You know, you want me to keynote your user conference, I will bill you for that. So anyway, that's kind of my thing. I did honestly a lot of work in my career when I was with Accenture. I was with them for 20 years, and I did okay over there. I made partner at World Headquarters, and I did a ton of finance, HR, and other projects. I have covered companies like I helped with the Alliance for Salesforce and Siebel back in the day.
Yes.
Accenture, yeah. And then I know that dates me right there, but anyway, that's enough on me. You guys get it. And if you can't tell, I'm actually an easygoing Texan. So I don't have an accent, but these other two guys on the call do. So anyway, we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and I'm afraid
I hardly understand the South Carolinians.
I'm afraid that it will be extremely easy to find out from which area of the world that Thomas and I are natively coming. So wild guesses allowed. And that is my pitch call for the audience to participate in commenting via your comment lines of your favorite channel, either Facebook, YouTube, or LinkedIn, where you are joining in and watching us. So feel free to place your questions and your comments in the lines, and we will look carefully what we can drop in to, let's say, get even more fun out of the observations Brian had. Brian, you just interviewed about 21 people in organizations you met in Las Vegas. And this was fresh last week. Now tell us what it was like, especially as it relates specifically to agentic AI. Was it an epiphany? Was it?
Okay, so let's paint the picture here. So I'm at an HR show. It's got the exposition hall alone, 400 and some odd exhibitors, and God knows how many other companies were roaming the halls trying to buttonhole people. And I spent most of my time safely secured in the press room, so I could avoid some of that hallway madness. But I did 21 or so or more of these 30-minute interviews with software executive teams. And each one of them comes in the door, Ralph, and, you know, they're going with the fervor of a televangelist going, you know, Brother Ralph, do you feel the healing powers of agentic AI? And they're just pounded on you about agentic this, agentic that. I'm surprised they didn't even rename the lunch there, an agentic box lunch, for the people at the conference, you like that one. Okay.
At least it's no more derivative generative.
Well, yeah. Yeah, generative, come on, Tomas, that's so old school. And that's so last Tuesday, talking about agentic AI.
Like
now you'll want to be bringing up algorithmic AI and machine learning. Oh my God, what a dinosaur. But anyway.
Look at my face. I am a dinosaur, even that I do not have the wise white hair.
How about rule-based systems?
You did look like a Mesozoic kind of guy, but yeah, I got it.
I'm not a Tyrannosaurus Rex, that is true. More Velociraptor. I like to hunt, write, and chase the facts in a team like Velociraptors do. Thomas, on to you.
So you mentioned healing power.
Oh, yeah.
So this implies that something is sick or ill, whatever word one prefers. So what exactly do they want to heal with the all-empowered agentic AI?
Well, a lot of the vendors are scrambling because they have a huge investment in old school code and that shows up in their software products. So the first challenge is, are they going to rewrite, rebuild, or whatever their products into a collection of agents? And for a lot of them right now, no. What they're going to do is they're going to actually create maybe some agent technology with some orchestration with it to connect up different kinds of modules and or connect them to other best of breed products, whatever, to kind of give sort of the look and feel of an agentic kind of world. So let's just do a little definitional deal here first. I mean, with agentic, you've got you have this opportunity where agentic applications are going to actually work and function radically different from what you know today. So forget things like the computer, like I'm using right now for this Zoom call, the StreamYard call, where it's got, tabs going across the screen. There are icons you click on. That's how you launch an application. But the real way to look at agentic is to imagine a world where a business event occurs and an AI tool is continuously monitoring the world. And because it detected a business event kicked off somewhere, it will now, if it's needed for you, it will send information about that event and pre-read that and figure out, Brian's probably going to need this data. He might want to look at these tables, and think of like you're flying a jet fighter and you've got a heads-up display. This stuff is coming in at the moment of need. And the jet fighter analogy is a great one because fighter jets will flash things up for pilots, where it notifies them that there is a bogey coming up behind you, or they've locked on their radar onto you or something like that. And it presents like, here are some countermeasures you might want to consider. And the pilot then can just execute that. Okay. So the pilot is not moving a mouse around in the plane, not clicking on a drop-down menu, not filling in an online form, not clicking on a bunch of, down drop kind of sub menus to select something. They don't do that. That's so old school UI. That is the pre-generative AI world. So what we have now are vendors who are struggling to figure out, how do I keep some of that? Because it cost me billions to build that product in the first place. How do I hang on to some of that and slap some agentic AI look and feel around it? We're going to drizzle it on like icing on a cake or something like that. And we should all expect that behavior from vendors. Vendors don't dramatically change their product lines overnight because so many of them will worry about how will we ever bring along all of our other customers who are on all the old products and the old versions and the old UX and everything else. How are we going to get them up to the future? That's going to be the challenge. So if that's the way the agentic world works, then what I have, what really makes it powerful is it's doing all this monitoring. It's kicking off all these different kinds of services or agents who are not just monitoring things, but forwarding things and acting on things and completing the transactions on behalf of people. But they also orchestrate from one agent to the next. That's the key word there, is orchestration. And they are the glue that binds all this stuff together. So I know I'm sounding a bit like I'm giving a primer on this, and I don't mean to, but it's important to understand how that works relative to the way the software industry was up until a few months ago. And so I show up at a show, 21 plus executive teams come in there, and they're telling me all about the amazing world of agentic AI and all the ills it will cure. And then I ask the important questions like, so which big problem areas are you going to cure? And that's when you hear like the brakes slam on, and they're like, oh no, when he asked us the terrible question, oops, everything is still, well, we're looking at this, and I had one vendor, I couldn't believe it. They said they'd integrated their product to another best of breed product using agentic AI. And I'm thinking like, what an incredible use case here, folks. I was stunned, absolutely stunned, verklempt. I don't know what the word I want to go for here. It was, to find out that someone finally came up with a technology that could integrate two applications together. God, if we'd only had something like that in the last 25 years. I kid you guys, but, I'm going, was that a great agentic use case? No. So sorry for the long rant, but I guess I'm telling you, I wasn't impressed with what I saw last week.
Brian, brilliant.
An agentic use case for a development tool company. So to automate the integrations. But even that worked well in the north.
So
I saw a generative use case that was pretty amazing. This was, give me a second, which vendor was that? What they did is you could shoot a video of you using an old green screen application. And you're just talking along while you're showing, like it was like an accounts payable application. It was like, I go up to the top, I click on like file open, whatever, and I start this transaction. And here's where I enter in the general ledger account code, the invoice amount, blah, blah, blah. And you tell all that and you click this button and it goes. Interesting thing, the generative AI tool actually looked at that and reverse engineered and built a whole new modern application based on the video and included edits and everything else. If you talked about it, it could infer it and figure out what the values and the edit rules would be. I would only use that for prototyping, but my God, that was incredible because within a matter of it only took you as long as it did to record the video, and about a few minutes later, bam, you have a whole application of sorts working for you. But that was a generative tool. So I'm still got my fingers crossed to see what an agentic tool could do instead. So anyway.
Interesting observation. So you found a lot of old wine in new bottles, so to say.
Oh, I should put that in my new article. Okay, but I like that analogy. I also found an appalling lack of focus on the real problems that are hammering human resource departments. Most of the innovation was at the margins. It was, we'll slap a little agentic AI to connect our application functions to other applications, but we really don't want to change our core product, which is ridiculous on its face because it would be like, I'll go back to the jet fighter example. You can't be flying a plane and having all these other systems presenting stuff. And then all of a sudden something says, now you need to pull over and get your tire gauge out and check the air pressure in the tires. You can't stop and do something that manual on a plane, so it's that's a real problem with this mix and match world of, let's build a full-blown workflow and have all the agents in there and get it as one delivered deal that solves a problem.
Fixing a flat tire in flight is very a pain in the neck, to say so.
Yeah, well, it'd be more than that. So let's get down to the, why was I so dissatisfied? I was dissatisfied because the hype was up here and the delivered reality was way down subterranean levels. I mean, it was unbelievably, split. And then one of the most pressing areas was in this area of talent acquisition. And I know you guys get a lot of CRM kind of listeners and probably don't care about talent acquisition. But I'll tell you right now that in executive committee meetings at almost every company around the world, every week, every month, there are 3 issues that get talked about every single time, pretty much. Number 1 is we still haven't won the war for talent. There's some operations person just railing on the chief HR officer about, I still don't have any people running these machines, or this one production line is still screwed up because we're missing people. Why can't you get us people? And it just goes on and on. It's painful to listen in on those meetings because the HR person just getting beat up on this point. They don't have the pipeline, they don't have the people, or the people they get don't have the skills, whatever it is. It's a problematic area, and that's one for those who are keeping track. The other 2 issues that are interesting, the second one is there's always some discussion about AI. And of course, there's always some wiseacre in the room and we'll go like, I know you can't spell the word pain without the letters AI. And yeah, they're right about that. So that's the second one. And third one, surprisingly enough, still has to do with sustainability and those kind of issues. But those come up repeatedly in almost every meeting, almost every time. So this AI one is omnipresent, and this thing about the war for talent is absolutely critical. So I'm going to stay with this example. In the HR world, if we know that recruiting is broken, then the first thing a great vendor ought to do is they ought to do some primary research and figure out what are the problems that contribute to this issue. And if you did that primary research, you'd find, about half a dozen big problems and maybe another dozen that go behind that tell you we got a really broken, screwed up process. So why would you waste your agentic AI efforts around the periphery of a mess? I mean, it's there's an expression in Texas, it's very crude, but I'm going to use it right now because it's really appropriate. Because if you just slap AI on top of a really messed up process, then what you've done is you've polished the turd. And that's what's going on right now. Some of them they're not changing, they're not reinventing, they're not radically reimagining how recruiting ought to be taken on. And so what you're getting these, things with sprinkled little hair bows on them that don't really do anything. Okay. It's not going to move the needle because they haven't addressed the problems that companies face today. And that left me wanting in a big way that no one has taken the time to study and figure out what the problems are.
So now if the vendors are not doing that, who should have an interest in doing so to set themselves apart, given that there's some interest in that? So means why not throwing the ball directly back at those who find only one way to spell pain? I have another one that doesn't have an I, and have them formulate a demand.
So there are, I think, a bunch of reasons why vendors have been incredibly slow or unwilling to really reframe the problem. Number one is, believe it or not, it's not one of their core competencies. They don't go out there and actually, their whole machinery as a company is to constantly come out with a stream of small changes and improvements because they don't want to disrupt their customer base too much. They love evolutionary change, not revolutionary change. And I don't think they've figured out, how do we introduce radically reimagined workflows and process, which is exactly what's going to happen with agentic AI, the way it's going to get rolled out. It will be fundamentally different. The whole idea of long, sequential, serially processed transaction flows is done. Put a fork in it. It's over. Let's go ahead and have a parting meal and raise a glass, to celebrate the old days of transaction processing. But that day is done. So it's never been in their DNA to do radical, change. And when vendors did that in the past, it scared the bejeebers out of them, because all of a sudden, when a client looks at, like, man, there's no connection between my old product, that I've been using for 25 years and this new solution. It's so radical and so different out there. Then what the customer is going to do is, well, maybe we ought to look at some other companies' options as well. So it opens up their install base to predation by competitors, and that scares vendors as well. I mean, I go on, but bottom line is, there's a lot of reasons why a lot of vendors just they're very uncomfortable with this kind of idea. But I also, if you look at the folks in a lot of these firms, they have people who understand a functional area in a very traditional way, and they're miles deep on that. But their background was never like working out at customers for months, years at a time, and really understanding how, what is the nature of the work and how could we radically change that. That's a project that many of them have never undertaken. And at this show, these are smaller vendors. A lot of them are. The vast majority of smaller companies. There's some Goliaths in there, obviously. The big ERP vendors are there, of course. But this is unfamiliar territory for them.
Isn't it also unfamiliar for the buyers? Because they are regularly unwilling to do a new implementation of something they already have. Because this is what it is. If it's drastically different, it's a new project. It's not a step on the road with the existing product.
Great observation, Thomas. There's a book that's a classic in the software industry. It's been out for ages. It was Crossing the Chasm by Jeffrey
90s,
Moore. Huh?
90s, yeah.
Yeah, well, you laugh, but
I've read it.
Ta-da, there it is.
Tell you a secret. One of my moves, or when we moved out of New Zealand, my wife dumped it. So I don't have it anymore.
Well, one of the things that Jeff's famous for in that book was the technology adoption curve, technology adoption lifecycle curve. And he posited that there were 5 kinds of software buyers out there. There were the innovators at the very far end of this bell curve. There's not many of them. And my whole career, I've been to maybe 5 companies like that as clients. And they're so far out there, they are almost scary. A couple of them I went to, all the IT people wore lab coats. And I'm thinking, and they all had names that started with doctor. I mean, they were a tough bunch to give a briefing to, let me tell you. But they're smart, and they don't care about risk, and they don't care about cost. All they care about is really cutting edge kind of stuff, because they see that kind of technology is the ticket to give them 2, 3, 4 years of competitive advantage. Right behind them are the early adopters. Then we're going to have the early majority, the late majority, and the laggards. Those are the 5 categories. And yeah, early adopters are they may not be the very first, which is what an innovator is, but they'll be right up there with them and they get a lot of value out of it. Then there's the chasm. Then we get the early majority. And the early majority, they want to buy from, if they can, they'll buy something from an established vendor. They're willing to accept some risk and so forth. But when you flip over the other half of the curve to the late majority and laggards, those people want no risk. They'll settle for competitive parity, not competitive advantage. And they're looking for something that's pretty good, buy it from a well-known vendor and get it cheap. And that's what they're interested in. So right now, when you talk about what kind of customers are out there looking for agentic stuff, everybody will be out there kicking tires and looking at stuff because it's always fun to go see cool things. I think all three of us have probably been to a car dealer and go like, man, I'd love to drive this Lamborghini or whatever. Wouldn't it be cool to own, this Ferrari or what have you? We can dream, but we all know the practical realities. We're not buying one of those in all likelihood. And I think that's true with a lot of the way software is bought. There's, I probably have, Lamborghini taste, but I also have a
Volkswagen budget.
I was going to say an Opel Kadett budget or something like that, Since they haven't made those for a few years, I'm sure a used Opel Kadett I could probably pick up for really next to nothing. But anyway.
The thing is, from that perspective, you will see directly there is a dream and you step in and you try to carry along your groceries for a week's supply and it won't fit. So you are in shit. Yeah. And that is exactly why you've chosen the Opel Kadett or the Vauxhall or normal type of car or the typical American suburban SUV like an Escalade or something like that. Easy to find a parking space in the US, but never in Europe. So there are some challenges. And what I observe from your findings is dreaming is nice, but reality is sometimes very dramatically back to basics. So they have nice wrappings around their software solutions, and they have a nice coloring, such as we have agentic AI inside. But the moment you poke in, it is like a card house. So what I was wondering is, what would have been your suggestions to some of the vendors, how they could have impressed you?
So I've done in my career lots of big re-engineering projects with clients. And I think we need to all take a refresher on like business process re-engineering and all the workshops and the ideation work that you would do. I remember we'd have rooms at clients. We'd take over like a big training room or something, a really big one that has whiteboards all the way around it. And we're writing down the components, the individual task involved with like a process or a major step within the process. And we're like writing them down on these little, Post-its, and then we're sticking them on the wall. And then we could all step back in the middle of the room and look at this thing in all of its magnificence. And then we'd realize like, why are we doing whatever, because when we'd have whole tracks about there's a set of controls that have to be, factored into the process as well. We're looking at all these things and realizing, just that one control alone causes us to add like another 60 steps into the whole process map. Some listeners may chafe at the idea, oh God, he's bringing back, business process reengineering, but the discipline is actually a good one. And I think a great tool to refresh us as to, is the process we have today still relevant? And if it isn't, then what are the components that we ought to be looking at to make sure we can actually build agents that can handle all those other components or different components that we want to have available today? So that skill set, I think, has been a bit missing, absent without leave or something for a while, and I think it needs to be rediscovered. That's one idea. The second thing is, what used to work great in showing clients how a new process is going to go, we'd actually use an animation tool to show them how things were going to go by different kinds of like transactions we'd enter in there. But then we would take we did kind of like old school time and time studies to see how long it's going to process, how many transactions are going to go a different way. And that way we can figure out, how big of maybe processing and operations research bottlenecks we are going to create or we're going to clear. That stuff moved forward over the decades, and that's the purview now of companies like Pega and Appian and others who've built, have built some incredible process automation tools. But the agentic stuff just takes it a big step, beyond that. And I think that's something we've got to rediscover and do that all over again. And that's when I haven't seen any evidence from vendors who are actually taking the time to revisit how their processes actually function and what customers are struggling with. And in particular, are they struggling with some new kinds of problems? And I really picked on one in this piece that I shared with Ralph and Thomas. It'll be out later this week, I hope, on Diginomica, and that was back on recruiting, was to talk about the effect of citizen AI tools and what they're doing to screw up recruiting all over the place. So we've got job seekers who, one guy famously used AI to apply to over 5,000 job positions in 1 week. I even asked, I was keynoting a big conference in, I want to say, Mumbai about 8-10 months ago. And I asked the audience, about 1,100 HR people, without tipping my hand, I go, how many of you have noticed a marked increase in the number of people applying to positions at your firms? Is your inbox and ATS filling up faster than ever these days? And the audience there, they're always so polite in Asia. I love those folks. They kind of start to sort of hold their hand up and they look left and they look right to see is anybody else can do it. And then when they realize everyone else is doing it, then all the hands are up. And it was like 90% of kids were they all were experiencing the same problem. There's this huge influx of resumes and applications hitting their system. And none of them knew to ever check with anybody else to find out, was it happening to them as well? I guess they all thought, man, we must have a great recruiting brand. Just look at all the people applying for positions here. When in fact, it's not. That's not it at all. It's everyday people as well as organized crime rings and others who are just mass spamming in recruiting systems with resumes, some of which are fraudulent, some of which are bogus, and some of which have been really tarted up by another citizen AI tool, which is the resume perfecting tools, the ones who take your resume and really make it either align with the job description or fill it full of flowery prose that makes you sound so darn important. I think I had one in this article where I talk about, I got a resume of somebody who worked in a fast food restaurant, and I ran their resume through one of these perfecting tools. And it was hilarious because I don't have it in front of me, but it had things like if you're used to driving up to the first drive-through window and give your money to somebody, well, you weren't a cashier. No, that's old school way of doing it on a resume.
I just pulled it up if you want me to quote it.
Yeah, go ahead. What's it called?
This is a fast food cashier. That is now a treasury transactions expert with extensive frontline experience and numerical precision skills.
Outstanding.
Your wording. Well, that sounds like
I'm surprised they didn't get hired away at the drive-through window by some other company with that kind of.
They pulled them through the car.
Let's flip that card a little. So, whenever I hear about citizen AI tools getting blasted, my instant reaction is that heck, the companies asked for it by automating all the HR processes away and putting that into an agentic or non-agentic ATS without any regard of the people.
Right.
So basically by treating people as cattle or resources, materials that can be rejected automatically at will.
Well, you're right. There is absolutely no humanity in that at all. And
yeah, well, it's still called human resources.
So one of my other things I'm working on is my book number 5, and this one is on what's wrong with the with management today. And of course, I'm a shy guy. I don't really hold any strong opinions on anything.
You are shy. Okay.
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah.
I won't believe it.
But to your point, Thomas, it's you're right on the money about this issue. One of the things I was doing in research in the book is I was pleased to see that one of the things that human beings crave is they want to see and to be seen. They want to have interactions with managers, and they want to know that their efforts have been noticed and are recognized, and and maybe if they're not doing well, they want someone to come over and give them in a non-threatening way some great little coaching tips that'll get their performance back on track. But this thing about to see and to be seen is a great idea, but it's hard to do it in a company that's like de-layered, several strata of management right out of the company. And so you have all these people who are now one of the 200 people that report to one manager. A 200 to 1 staff to manager ratio is not a place you want to be as a human being. It's good if you're a machine or a Borg or something like that, but it's not good. And that's part of the problem. Yeah. So sorry for the digression. I took us down, into management theory here, but we do have a problem where I think companies they're already overreaching on how much management they want to strip out. A lot of them do it just because they are professional managers installed by a private equity overlord, or they report to Wall Street, and they think they can goose short-term earnings by, thinning out management ranks. The net effect, though, could be devastating in the long term, though. And I don't think a lot of these brain dead leaders, have really thought that far in advance. I mean, it's hard to get these thinking 90 days in the future.
Brain dead leaders. That is the magnificent word which comes and will freeze into my mind. Yeah.
Or you could call it zombie management.
That is a title which gives you dollars, Brian. Really, man. Such as you were so polite and so shy, as you said. I would have put the topic. It would have been: is there anything going right in management these days? Question mark. Yeah.
So,
well, we got way far afield here on this point. We could talk in April next year. We could talk about the book Zombie Management. How about that?
I love that one. But in the meantime, we are challenging those zombie managers with the challenge of their HR departments that they would like to have a positive experience bringing companies forward by utilizing, from the HR perspective, some useful agentic AI projects to the benefit of their employees, to the benefit of the company, and probably to the benefit of the world. But what you find was not giving you the positive kick forward and
Yeah. So
giving.
I'll put a real sharp point on this one. Lots of vendors will talk to you about automating everything after the application has gone through the applicant tracking system. They want to use agentic AI to make the to do the scoring of applications, to make the follow-up phone calls, to schedule interviews, all the way through the onboarding and get the person in the door for the first time. They want to do all that through one big long agentic workflow. I don't have a problem with that as a concept. What I have a problem with is the artificiality of them making the start point after it comes out of the ATS, because the problems right now are huge, significant, and numerous before the application ever got to the applicant tracking system. And some of those I already touched on, but I talked about the people mass applying to jobs, but we have a tremendous amount of fraud going on where people are pretending to be other people because they're using someone else's credentials and so forth to get the job, to turn right around, and then they're not who you think you are. There are people who are, I don't know why, but there are a lot of people who apply to jobs knowing it's an in-office job. I think I gave an example like in Akron, Ohio, and yet you've got someone applying for the position out of Belarus. And you're going, how are they going to get to the office every day, making a commute there? So what's going on right now. There's a tremendous garbage in, garbage out kind of problem that's choking, or the funnel at the front end. And even then, just before it gets into the ATS, we've got the problem with the overly perfected resumes, like the cashier that Thomas was reading about. I could tell when he was reading that, he was thinking about, I need a name tag that has a title like that on my, deal.
My chest is not wide enough for that.
I need it written over the shirt, as the title won't fit a name tag.
We all need to get name tags like that and wear them at the next show we're to get, we're at.
I think what we have established so far is that there's a kind of a vicious circle going on.
Yeah.
So both sides are
they're engaged in the win game.
Yeah, regardless whose offense or defense, they are all arming up, which is a race to the bottom, basically. So what do you think need either buyers or vendors of this type of software do in order to break it? What would be good pointers? I don't have
I hate to say it's something like this, but were I running a HR recruiting operation, in a company, I think I would take a hard look at, I want to look for something. I'm going to look for telltale signs as to a person's authenticity. Show me a college kid who's got on their resume that they did a lot of work at, maybe they did the fast food job. Maybe they've had several of these kind of roles. If I'm looking for college students, I'm looking for somebody who shows a willingness to get out there, work, hustle, and is hungry for a real job. And those are the kind of people I'd probably move up to the top of the queue to talk to, because I know they are the real deal. Now show me somebody whose resume is so polished, so perfected, I'd probably kick them out because it's too rehearsed. It's too good to be true. And that old adage, if it's too good to be true, it probably is. I would come up with a bunch of other techniques that I wouldn't share with the competition of the market. For example, every resume or application that comes in, I want to run that against one of these databases that keeps track of salary and payroll data. And if it turns out like Thomas is applying for a job at my company and I find out he's got 3 full-time jobs already somewhere else and is getting paychecks from those companies, then I don't need him to waste my time and money by being us being his 4th full-time concurrent job.
I easily put 36 hours into a 24-hour day.
Well, with the help of agentic AI, no problem.
I know you find it incredulous, but I've actually given presentations where I show, like on one of my show, the entire LinkedIn dialogue about an HR person who finally discovered that this one guy was holding down 3 full-time positions with 3 different companies. He's getting paid for all 3 and doing a terrible job of each one of them. But he didn't care, because if he gets, because most companies are going to take at least 12 to 16 weeks before they wise up and fire him. By then, he's already lined up another 1 or 2 jobs. This guy's deal is to clear about $200,000 to $400,000 every single year in multiple full-time payments. So,
impressive.
Well, you got to hand it to their entrepreneurialism, but they're not delivering quality results for anybody, probably. Anyway, I would put in these kind of traps and new ideas to get rid of. I want to tackle the volume of junk coming in. I need to clean a lot of the garbage out. The second thing is I need to get rid of the really questionable ones that will never, have a role in the company, because, like I said, it's an in-office job and they're 2 continents away. Let's not even look at the waste time on this one. And I might even do something even more old school. I may want recruiters to actually sit there and do an A/B test and find out, of all these resumes or applications you have, which ones would you move forward in the process? And then let's run them through your ATS system and find out which ones it would recommend. And if they're different, I'd sure want to know why. Because my suspicion is, I think a lot of ATS systems, applicant tracking systems, are being fooled by perfected resumes. So so what am I saying? I'm basically introducing new capabilities at the front of the process. I'm introducing apps that haven't been built yet. And I'm also saying we need to do things, we may need to interrupt the process and introduce some manual or human intervention just to double check stuff. I want that human in the middle. I want someone to double check, because you're right, Thomas, this is a war game thing, and we need to be vigilant in not only having our arsenal of tools and weapons and systems on our side, but be constantly monitoring the other side and building countermeasures as appropriate.
But now you're right in the middle of this efficiency promise that pretty much every vendor has, is, hey, we are achieving you, or helping you achieve more with less. So maybe that thought is already at fault. Not that I'm a skeptic about automation, but I'm not one.
I would be a hypocrite if I said I was that old systems can't deliver this technology, because I've certainly helped clients put this stuff in, and I've seen how things can dramatically change, and they can. And I want to just say I've been thrilled that so many of clients of mine would bring in these changes and didn't turn right around and like lay off people. They didn't do that. They were able to fuel and go for growth, whatever.
Yeah.
But I also am a realist to know that clients often hired me simply, my wife one time famously asked me, how come with all the clients you've been to and all the work you've done with clients, how come you've never taken a job with one of your clients? And I just turned around and looked right at her and I said, dear, the companies that call me up and they ask for help, they're broken, they're screwed up, they are messed up firms. So why would I want to go to work for a company like that? Even though I fixed a piece of it, I can't fix it all, sometimes. I mean, I was being a bit melodramatic there or whatever, but I know I've put things together for clients that have seriously, fundamentally changed how they operate and perform and compete in the market. And I can go to my grave knowing that I did a good job on that. But I think we're looking now at another set of changes that go beyond that. So back to my point, we're moving away from the drop down menus on laptop computers, whatever, and we're going to that jet fighter heads up display kind of world. And it's a different application market now. And that's what I didn't see at the HR show. I didn't see the new market. Not at all.
A pity.
I'm sure when this story hits, I'll get 100 phone calls. So I'm sure it's out there. Maybe I did. And I copped to the fact right off the bat. I only saw 21 or so companies, and there were about 400 or 500 of them there easily. And no one human being can see them all. But anyway, I did what I could.
So
At least
the wild guess would be that 480s which have not been interviewed would have been the smashing hit, and I doubt it. So I go for the 21s you picked are smartly picked, and you have had a good overview, but it is leaving the special taste of what's going on right now, and where is a potential cure and a potential added advice you would give to the vendors what they should do differently, just to meet more the wishes and the needs of the customers.
I think some of them need,
yeah.
I think some of the companies need to find some new innovators and early adopter kind of companies out there, and they need to send a small team out there and really dig in a deep, profound way to find out what's happening around certain processes. There is a bit of primary research they really need to do, and once they know what the new problems and the challenges on the processes are, then I think they can start sketching out kind of what the new, what these agentic workflows should look like and what all capabilities they should contain. I mean, there's a lot of capabilities that we have available to us on our mobile apps that I know are not part of a lot of mainstream applications, and yet all that could be added together and made into a great kind of, solution. We need ideas. That's the currency we need first and foremost now. From the ideas, then we can go build applications. We don't need to just willy-nilly grab something and tack it onto an existing application because it sounds neat or cool. We need something solving the real problems. That's why I say do the research and be prepared to do it again and again and again.
All around, it sounds dystopian. So, do the buyers of the software get any value out of their investments into some agentic AI stuff at all these days?
I don't know. And I say that sincerely because when I visit with companies, I look at what they have, and what they have are like older cloud SaaS applications. That's what they have. So you're asking, are they getting value out of the new agentic stuff? I almost have to say, probably not right now. Where they're getting some value are in some other flavors of AI that were out in the last 2.5 years, like in the multivariate algorithmic kind of machine learning tools. Those I'm seeing everywhere in forecasting, optimization, planning, and those kind of applications. That stuff is killing it out there. And it's moved down market quite a bit as well. So those things you now see routinely in mid-sized companies and even somewhat below that. Generative is creeping in all over the place. You see people using a lot of the most common use cases, like go build me a presentation summarize these financial reports, translate this, a lot of the generative ones aren't as exciting, but the cool one that I mentioned earlier, where they took a video and made an application out of it, that was all generative AI, and that's pretty cool to see. I think on the agentic, we're still way early on the introduction of agentic into a lot of business applications, no matter what vendors may say. And I think we're going to see some trial and error. We're going to see some experimentation. We should applaud the vendors who do that. And then we shouldn't be surprised if we're going to see this stuff get changed many times around. So I think it's early days. I'm not expecting to see huge, take it to the bank kind of, value coming out of agentic AI at the moment, but it's coming.
Well, there certainly seems to be some hope. If I look at, for example, Salesforce's statements that they have more than 10, I think 12 or 13,000 customers on their agent force right now, out of which I think 8,000 are paying customers. So you pay for that only if you have some serious hope in returns.
Yeah. The funny thing is, I think a lot of vendors realized that what they were building up with generative AI was not all that, amazing, and could be done with a lot of citizen AI tools for next to nothing. So I think a lot of the pricing hopes and dreams vendors had with generative AI kind of dissipated. They realized they're not going to be able to get huge premiums off of that in many examples. It changes when you get, on the agentic side, it could change, but there was something I made a one-line mention in this article. One of the reasons vendors like to drizzle out new technologies a little bit at a time is because they can still collect the subscription for their old ERP solution, if you will, or HR solution or CRM solution, and they can value bill, if you want to call it that, the new agentic things and collect two sets of money at the same time. In contrast, if a startup comes out and they just have nothing but an agentic view only of CRM, for example, they only get to sell it one time and they only get to collect one revenue stream off of that. So there is the incumbents are always kind of incented to drag their feet when it comes to the rollout of these things, because they can make money on the new and the old applications, and they like to have that overlap as broad as possible. That's your dystopian nightmare right there, Thomas. Because the old one's not fresh enough to stay current, but we got to use it for the time being. And the new one's not complete enough that we could cut off the old one. Therefore, I got to pay two sets of money. And I know you're probably thinking like, man, that Brian, he is an evil, twisted guy to think of ideas like that. But that's exactly kind of how the market works. So, all right. Well, guys, I have talked you to death today, and I'm glad you didn't. So,
and you got one more thing to do in Steve Jobs kind of manner. There are the famous last words. So you already sort of touched them. Because what we'd like to hear from you is what specific advice you would give to vendors that are going to build agentic software, what to do. One or two pieces of specific advice, if you want to.
I'd say the first one is grow some really thick skin, because you're going to realize your old products, you can't still be in love with them anymore. They're at the end of their life, and you need to learn to fall in love with a whole new kind of capability that looks and feels very differently. So prepare to fall out of love with the old stuff. Cool. You want 30 of these? Sometimes I actually have the guts and the persuasive powers to convince the CEO of a client and some of their executive committee members to come with me to Silicon Valley and kick tires and look at different new technologies. Why? Because I need to get their heads out of their comfort zone that they're so used to being in. I need you know, and I think what vendors need to do, including the CEO, is quit going to Wall Street and only to your top 1 or 2 mega super intergalactic size client account, and make an effort to go visit with about 20 or 30 of all different size kind of companies that are in your galaxy, and go there by yourself. Go there and humbly ask them to show you what they're doing, what their problems are, because what you're going to learn is it's so different in the trenches than the bullshit story you've been telling on Wall Street. And when you come back, you're going to have a different kind of mandate and a way of looking at AI and everything else that you're going to tell your team on how they're going to build stuff. Silicon Valley is sometimes an echo chamber, and you need to step out from there and get real. I'll stop at 2. How about that? Is that okay?
Absolutely.
I might unmute myself.
There you go. Now you're back unmuted. Sorry.
Well, I deliberately asked for 1 or 2, so it's more than fair that you stop it.
Okay.
Thanks, Brian. This was
Gentlemen,
an amazing
it's been
hour.
great. I'm going to go, and believe it or not, I'm going to go have Tex-Mex here for lunch. So
enjoy,
oh,
and hope to see you soon without a camera in between again.
All righty. Well, if you're in Vegas, you're probably going to run into me, not by plan or design. It's just because every vendor, it seems like, has to have an event there. Thanks for having me on.
I'll be at Vegas when you are not, but shit happens.
Yeah, lately I've been running into a whole bunch of analysts that I see it sporadically, not the usual gang I hit at some of the ERP events, but it's calendar driven, is what's doing. Thanks again for everything, guys. And
thanks for being here, and thanks to the audience as well. Next year, by the way, we are talking about the impact of security on security software on CX with our guest Ray Assuncion, which is quite a different look at CX.
Yeah, that's it'll be very different from my conversation, but
yeah,
you know what?
Ray is a totally different person.
Nobody talks like me anyway, so anything would be different. Anyway.
Okay, see you.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Bye.
Cheers, Brian. Take care.